Okay, so back to our 4 considerations. We've talked about the rate of return. We just talked about the average versus actual returns. And now let's go ahead and dive into taxes, and then we'll cover fees. So 3 tax categories. There's taxable, there's tax deferred, and there is tax exempt. Okay, so your money could either be taxed as it's growing, or it could grow tax deferred, meaning that you don't pay taxes while it's growing. And then there's tax exempt, which means you don't pay taxes when it's growing or when you take it out. All right? Let's talk a little bit about the tax history and dive into this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so let's take a look at the tax history. Over here we have the Great Depression, we have a lot of wars going on, we have lots of things happening in our history. But one thing we're going to focus on is that we have had very high taxes in the past, and we could potentially have high taxes in the future. If you are currently in a 20% effective tax rate bracket, all right, or an effective tax rate, not the tax bracket, but if your tax rate is at 20%, then if you have $100,000 in, let's say, an IRA or a 401k where you put the money in pre-taxed, then that means that you have really $80,000 and the IRS has $20,000. But it kind of depends on when you take the money out. So the real question is, what's going to happen in the future? Are taxes going to go down or are taxes going to go up? Because if taxes go up, for example, maybe they get up closer to our average line. If they get closer to our average line, then it's possible for the IRS to actually have more money than you do if your money is in what we call a qualified account where you deferred taxes until later. So maybe you want to pay your taxes now and get them out of the way if you think taxes are going to go down, if you think taxes are going to go up in the future, you may want to pay your taxes now and get them out of the way. If you think taxes are going to go down in the future, then you may want to actually postpone your taxes until later. Now, you may have been told that you're going to be broke in retirement. You're not going to be making as much money, and so therefore you're not going to have to pay as much in taxes. Well, guess what? I'm going to show you 3 strategies to triple your retirement income. So if you're going to triple your retirement income, you could have a decent income in retirement, putting you in these upper income tax brackets, even in retirement. So you could still be paying a lot of money in taxes in the future, even though your kids might get out of the house, you might pay off your house, you might do all these things, you still could have a high income in retirement, therefore you might be paying high taxes. Okay, now I want to talk about what we call tax thresholds. This is very interesting. Let's take a look at this one. Now you might be saying, well, I am not in that top 1%. I'm not going to be paying a lot in taxes because I'm not in the wealthy category. Well, the taxes can be based on what we call tax thresholds. So way back to 1913, when the initial tax rate was at 1% to begin with, okay, you had to make over $500,000 to even be taxed at that 1%. Now, if we fast forward down here until we get into the 40s, in the 40s, they had raised the top tax rate all the way up to 81% if you made over $5 million. Now, I don't know who that was, okay, back in 1941 that was making over $5 million. Maybe it was one of the Rockefellers or something. I don't know. But watch what they did in 1942. In 1942, they raised taxes, but only 7%. They only went from 81 to 88%, but they lowered the threshold to be in that 88% to 200,000. We call that casting a wider net, okay? So they were casting a wider net to be able to get more people. They went from 5 million down to 200,000. Now, what else can we learn from history? Well, let's scroll down here and look at the Reagan years. During the Reagan years, okay, we had really low taxes, okay, but almost everybody was in the top income tax bracket because they lowered the threshold so low that even if you made $29,000 a year, you were in the top tax bracket. So there's a lot of things. They have a couple of levers that they can pull. They can raise the tax rates and they can also lower the thresholds to be in those top tax rates. And now let's talk about what we call your effective tax rate. Okay, so the way your effective tax rate works is that if you make $250,000 a year as a married filing jointly with some standard deductions, your taxable income would be around $222,000. That puts you in the 24% tax bracket. However, not all of your money is taxed at 24%. The first $22,000 that you make is taxed at 10%. Then the $22,000 to the $89,000 that you make is taxed at 12%. And then from 190 to 364 is taxed at the 24%, and so on. You get the idea here. So what we do is we kind of average it out, and that gives you your effective tax rate. So even if you are in a 24% tax bracket, you may only have to pay 16% in taxes. Okay, so the final thing I want to talk about with taxes is, should you pay your taxes now or later? One of the biggest questions a lot of people have. Okay, so let's say that our annual contributions to our retirement is $20,000 a year. And let's say that we are in that 20% tax bracket. And let's just say that taxes stay the same. Let's just say that when we take out the money in retirement, we are also in a 20% tax bracket. And let's just say that we have 20 years until we're going to retire and withdraw this money. And let's just say that we are earning 7%. That's our current scenario. The million-dollar question is, should we pay our taxes now or should we pay our taxes later? So if you have a qualified plan, a SEP IRA, simple IRA, a 403B, a 457, a 401k, an IRA. These are all what we call qualified plans where you get to put your money in pre-tax. The biggest misconception is that you get to save money on your taxes. Not true. What happens is that you get to put the money in pre-taxed, so that lowers your income and you pay less taxes that year, but all you're doing is putting $20,000 in, which is going to eventually grow to $877, but it's not all your money. Because you put your money in pre-taxed, you partnered with the IRS in your retirement. They own $177,000 of your retirement, which means your take home is $701,000. Now, here's where the big misconception comes in. If you decided to pay your taxes now, you're not going to invest $20,000. If you did invest $20,000 after taxes, then yes, you would have to pay more in taxes, but you're not. What you're going to do is you're only going to invest $16,000 because we need to pay $4,000 in taxes that year. So we're not paying more taxes, we're simply investing less, okay? So we're investing less. Now you might think that if you're investing less, then you're not going to earn as much compounding interest. That is true. You're only going to grow to $701,000, not $877,000, but it's all yours. You don't owe anything to the IRS. You already paid them the $4,000. You don't owe anything to the IRS. You get to keep all of it, which means it doesn't matter which one you choose. If taxes, whoa, dropped my pen. If taxes are going to stay the same. Now, what happens if taxes go up? If taxes go up by even 10%, now all of a sudden, your take home in the future is only going to be $614,000 because more money is going to go to your partner in your retirement, which is the IRS. If you had paid your $4,000 in the beginning, okay, then you're done. You still get to keep your $701,000. That is a big difference in retirement. Very, very, very important to understand. Now, if taxes go down in the future, then yes, you'd be better off postponing the taxes. But again, if you're going to learn 3 strategies to triple your retirement income, then you may want to consider what your taxes might be in the future. You may be in that upper income tax bracket and pay a lot more in the future.